Welcome to Nasdaq Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, global markets reporter at Nasdaq. Joining me to discuss developing a returns strategy that addresses COVID-19 challenges, including health and safety and managing complex logistics, is Sender Shamiss, CEO of goTRG. Now, this is really interesting, Sender, because you're seeing a negative impact of reverse buyers on profits as stores reopen and goods purchased pre-lockdown are now being returned in mass quantities.
Very correct. But first, I want to say thank you for having me on board. Appreciate it very much. We are definitely seeing a negative impact on quantities. What we expected was a higher volume of product. Most of the big box retailers and the home improvement stores had a higher influx in purchases. Instead, what we found is that the amount of units purchased has gotten smaller and the actual size of the item got bigger. It seems like people are taking on bigger projects, home renovation projects and things of that nature. The footprint of an item basically grew by about 200%. It's not exactly that people are buying more product, it's that they're buying more expensive items, but they're buying really less inventory and different inventory than what they would normally do. I compare it to almost parents nesting before having a child, and it kind of changing their buying habits from that perspective. That's what COVID brought on.
Why has customer loyalty been so low during the pandemic, and how does that correlate to the broken returns process? Is brand and store loyalty not as much of a concern for consumers anymore, or is that specific to COVID-19 behavior?
So I think it's a factor of what I just started telling you with nesting. I think there's two times people change their buying habits consistently, and that's marriage, like childbirth, things of that nature, and death. And I think COVID this pandemic has brought that out in people, and they've started changing some of their habits just out of fear, of course. And I think that ultimately some of this will go back, but I also believe that a percentage of sales are going to stay within these categories for a longer period of time. But we're seeing that as things open up, people are still tending to shop online and things of that nature.
So where does goTRG fit into the retail and e-commerce ecosystem?
Well, so the mission is simple. Our mission is to transform the circular economy by providing return solutions that mitigate financial and environmental waste. That's a pretty big mouthful. I think simplistically put, we help retailers and manufacturers understand their returns better and really mitigate that financial loss of returns and that environmental loss. And it starts at the store. From our perspective, what we do at the end of the day is we help them understand why is someone returning a product? Is it avoidable, the return itself? And what happens when that unavoidable return hits their stores? The entire ecosystem between that time and the time that they need to put the product back on the shelf or recycle it or send it back to a vendor, including that accounting process that sits in between.
So what's your outlook for holiday 2020? Do you expect the accelerated e-commerce trends to remain in place, or will it be more of a combination of buy online, pick up in store, brick and mortar?
So 84% of respondents, according to a survey that we did, expected holiday shopping delivery delays and out of stock issues to be worse this season because of the pandemic. I know according to that same study, 52% of respondents are shopping earlier than they usually do. My suggestion is get out there early, shop earlier, 100%. We also know that to answer your earlier question of buy online, return in store, I have the statistic now, 77% of all the respondents that we surveyed made their return in store before when they were buying online, and now it declined to about 20% because of COVID.
Are you seeing where purchases are made online and being returned to the physical store?
So there's a lot of buy online, return in store. In the industry, typically the number could range anywhere from around 25 to 50%. I know that before the pandemic, the number was much smaller. And I think that after the pandemic, that number grew, the number was much bigger before the pandemic. And after that pandemic, it went down because people are not as comfortable going back into stores. And I think there's about 50% attrition rate from the amount of product that people are willing to buy online and return in store. And they're more comfortable going to to post offices and using your 3PLs returning product. So that number of returns from buying online, returning to store is going down. But I think eventually it'll smooth itself out.
All right, Sender, appreciate the insight. Thanks for joining us on Trade Talks.
Thank you very much.
And thanks for joining me. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq.